Welcome everybody. I was going to sit in Bigfoot, but I thought I'd sit in Sexy Meat instead. This is Sexy Meat, double E-T, not E-A.
I found some sausage behind here. I think it is M-E-A-T.
So we've got a brilliant panel. The title of tonight is Property Cycles, Active Travel in the Office, and we thought we'd dissect what works and what doesn't work with these brilliant people. The format is that I thought we'd have a series of mini interviews, so starting with Samantha, I'm going to call you tonight because there's a Sam, 5 to 10 minutes with each, and then we'll have a little group discussion and then questions from the floor if that suits, but feel free to interrupt at any stage if you want. So without further ado, I thought I'd just quickly introduce all four of you. So we got Samantha McClary here, BCO CEO, for the last 9 months now, I think, counting the days. You were formerly EG editor, Estates Gazette editor for 5 years, but you were there for 21 years. I was amazed to find, which is a long time.
Straight out of kindergarten, if we have kindergarten in this country. Play school.
And next to you is Basil Demeroutis. Basil, you are managing partner of 4 Partnership. You're also involved with More. 4 and More. You are currently working on Number 1 Poultry. You just delivered TBC London, which is a fine building. And hopefully you'll be talking a little bit about those later. Justin is fresh in from Australia.
I wouldn't say fresh.
Justin is founder and chief executive of Five at Heart, where you've been for 8 years, and you essentially provide the stuff that we attach our bikes to, don't you, in key buildings? You'll describe it a bit better than that.
You've done well.
And finally, Sam Turney from 3 Space, you're head of business development there, and you were formerly at Cycle UK, and you'll be speaking a little bit about both those things. So I thought I'd get started with you, Samantha.
Or you could call Sam Samuel.
If he's a Samuel, he might be a Samson for all I know.
Yeah. Or a Samantha, you never know.
I'm not going to go there.
No,
Right.
I am Sam.
Okay.
I can be other Sam if you
You
want.
can call me Samantha, it's okay.
Samantha, you have 4,200 members within your organisation. What sorts of things are they telling you about bicycle facilities in offices?
I think it depends who they are. So we have quite a broad range of membership. Not all of them are cyclists, which I'm working on. But I think there is, depending on who you talk to, but most of them probably want to provide good amenity for consumers, us, I suppose, of workspace, but also don't want to be pushed to over-deliver on that. And I think there is a big feeling at the moment that they are being forced to over-deliver, that the space is underutilised, and that at the moment sort of policy isn't thinking about the unintended consequences of that. Trying to encourage sustainable travel, but in doing so, digging out basements and unlocking, thousands of tons of embodied carbon. So there's frustration, I think, about the lack of understanding about how the world is operating today.
I suspect this will be a theme, going through tonight, that perhaps we are seeking sort of over provision of cycle spaces. Yeah. What, as an organisation, do you think you can do about that as the BCO?
Yeah, so I think we can, we have a full membership of people who design, develop and operate buildings across the UK. So we can certainly engage with that membership to get a real understanding of how those spaces are being utilised. And I also think we can, sort of bring those tales to life and start to advocate in a way that lands on the ears of policymakers, that they understand the challenges that are out there, and perhaps understand that actually we've probably got enough provision but we need to be thoughtful about how we put that to better use. And there's probably a role for BCO there as well in enabling the owners and operators of those buildings to trust each other to share space or think beyond the red line.
We are essentially all cyclists on this panel, I think, aren't we? So does that feel weird advocating to you for less cycle provision in a sense?
No, because I, like many people, don't cycle to work.
Why not?
Because I live too far away and the downs are in the way.
Yeah.
We have cycle provision at the BCO office. Not great.
In the
It's
city,
not one of
isn't it?
yours, yeah. But I wouldn't leave my nice bike, which I'd want to ride in any of those spaces. And that's not because those spaces aren't secure, so to speak. It's because I think as human beings and as Londoners, which I probably shouldn't say this, but stuff it, I've had some of that rum. I don't trust the other people. Like, I've had too many bikes nicked from secure spaces.
Really?
Yeah, or bits of my bike. Someone takes the saddle, which is odd. So I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And mainly it's because it's too far away, which I think is what we've seen. Neil did the great piece of research for us a little while ago, and you look at the reasons people don't cycle, and it's not because there's not the facilities, it's because they live too far away, and that is only going to have got bigger post-COVID because everyone moved out. And
what is the role of the expanding hire bike system in that scenario then? Is that influencing that?
I haven't seen studies on it, but I would assume it does. You can look out the window of any office building around here and you see oodles and oodles of Lime bikes, don't you, or forest bikes, or any other cycle that's available. And I think there's the challenge probably is going to be, well, how do we deal with those? Can we encourage people to use active travel, but how do we stop messing up our streets and creating fire hazards and all those sorts of things? I was sat on a panel about mitigating sort of terrorism, really, and how we create get out routes for people. And half the time, Lime bikes are in the way of escape routes. So there's got to be something that we do around them.
Basil, can I turn to you just quickly? I don't know if that was 5 to 10 minutes, but I'll come back to you, obviously. From your perspective as a developer of buildings, what is the current atmosphere like for bike provision? What would you say?
I think we get oftentimes fixated as an industry on the kind of prescriptive nature of everyththing. Tell me how many bike racks I need. Tell me how many this I need. Tell me how big a pet spa I need to have. Whatever it is, like, we get fixated on that without necessarily thinking about what is the outcome. I mean, the word you used that we're trying to accomplish, the outcome, and then what are the things we need to do to accomplish that outcome. So my outcome as a developer is to maximize profit for my investors, maximize rents, maximize price. And because we're an ethical developer focused on sustainability and social impact, I also am thinking about health outcomes and try to remove barriers for people cycling. So fundamental question is the barrier, you said it very, very succinctly, is the barrier that we don't have enough cycle racks? Answer, no. Okay, so let's put that aside. I think we can all agree that that's not the barrier. So what are the barriers? So as a cyclist, we're all, as you say, we're all cyclists. So it's when it's wet outside, or if I'm commuting in, there's no place to put my bike, either at the station or leave it in the city, or it's not really a pleasant experience, or it's kind of, I have to go by the waste bins at the back to put my bike down, or when I get to the bike rack in the basement, it's like a labyrinth to get out, and I just feel like unwelcome. All of these things are like subtle little bits of friction, and I think we've got to remove those points of friction. And again, if we're focused on the outcomes, then I think we start to focus on the points of friction that we need to start removing. And I think you might get a completely different looking end of trip facility than you otherwise would if you start thinking about that kind of thing. So like at CADWorks, for example, in Glasgow, where you were or today, even, we put the first cycle in, cycle out ramp in Scotland. Again, fine, it's an idea I stole from Alpha Beta here, but fair enough. It was the first one in Scotland, and it's cool. It's a cycle in ramp. It's got glass walls. You kind of zoom down it. You kind of have this moment of fear as you're making the round turn. It's kind of fun, and it's visible from the reception, and it's great. At TBC at London, where you've been down, we put it right next to the main entrance. It's not back of beyond. We've got great facilities for drying rooms and all these kinds of things that remove these points of friction. That's what we try to do.
And how has the Glasgow one gone down? What's the feedback been like?
It's been good. Again, Glasgow weather and streets aren't ideal, but I think it's gone down pretty well. It's been really well received and well used.
What learnings did you take to TBC from that, if anything?
What learnings did we take? I think it's about the access. It's kind of the last 100 meters almost before you get to the bike racks. That's important. Like, what is that experience and that bit of the end of trip like for users? I think is important. And we did things like cool down zones and bike wash stands. We did like a few more things that actually make it easy. You think if you live in central London, you want to wash your bike. Where do you wash your bike? There isn't a place. I mean, I use the pet spa in my apartment building, actually, much to my landlord's chagrin. Hopefully,
it's
no
the
one.
second time you've mentioned
Pet spa. I'm
spas.
obsessed. I'm obsessed with pet spas. Hopefully, no one from Greystar's here. And otherwise, I'm going to get evicted for using their pet spa to wash my bike. But it's true. There's like literally nowhere to wash your bike.
Right. And a cool down zone you mentioned as well. Yeah. Is that where you just get off your bike and
stretch
relax a bit?
Yeah,
oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Massage. Yeah. Look, it could be anything, and I think these are, again, fun, removing friction. These kind of things really matter.
And last question for the moment: number one, poultry. What's going to happen there in terms of end of journey facilities? Have you got a plan for that that's radically different to TBC because of its location?
I don't know. We were talking about it earlier. I think I'm not sure how much more you can push things like maybe different types of racks or different types of lockers or different kind of little micro features. But we seem to be asymptotically reaching the point of maximum impact that you can have. There's only so many different ways that you can mount a bike and park a bike in a space. So it'll be an iteration, not a revolution.
Sorry, can I be a journalist? Do you think though that you should, with one poultry, and given that the figures that we know, the CPA figures that came out about utilisation of bike spaces in the city, that like 13% or whatever, isn't it? Should you even be putting in any?
Well,
or should you be talking to your local landlords and saying, "Can we share?"
No, it's a great. I mean, you start to get into issues around security and access, and it's not so easy to solve that particular sharing one. But I mean, definitely sharing infrastructure is a great idea. We're not. Funny enough, the last time it was redone, the bike facility is probably a decade old. We're going to make it a bit bigger. We're going to make it a lot nicer, but we're not like fundamentally doubling the amount of bike racks. And I think that's really key is, how do we make it more interesting, more enjoyable, more pleasant, and make you feel a bit special when you get off your bike, that you're part of the cool crowd. Mm-hmm.
How much of it is it a part of the selling that you do to potential occupiers, the bike facility? Where does it rank in the ranking of facilities?
I think it's in the mix. I'd say it's in the top half. It depends. I think if you get a CEO or head of HR who's a cyclist, I think then they kind of resonates. But again, I think it's a little bit about the software that goes along with it. Okay, fine, great, we have this space, but what are you doing with it? Well, you could do a charity cycle ride. We're doing something at Poultry in the summertime where we're linking up with a charity and being a destination for their cycling. We've done that in Glasgow. You want to, again, if the outcome we want to get is more people on bikes, we know that that women don't like to ride bikes as much as men. The numbers are vastly different. So maybe you actually get some sort of program where you buddy up a woman with a more experienced cyclist, or someone who's not a cyclist before. You buddy up with someone more experienced. Again, we've done that in Glasgow. We've done things with Savills in Glasgow, where the guys did a ride from the top of the country to the bottom of the country, and we welcomed there to the building and raised a bunch of money for them. Again, I think it's this software that has to go along with this obsession about numbers of lockers and double stackers and all this kind of stuff. Important. I'm talking next to a man who sells double stackers and lockers for a living, but it's a software that goes along with it as well.
Yeah, so a good point to bring you in, Justin, from software to hardware. How has your job changed in the last 5 years, say, in terms of provision, and what's your outlook on regulation?
Yeah, we're having the same conversations. I was talking to an architect the other day who I was working with on Elizabeth House, and I remember sitting in a planning session in Westminster just talking about realities of data and usage, and how looking more at experience and better use of amenity, because quality, volume is definitely not the answer. Just having good quality amenity isn't either. It's about having a really good mix of things. And I think you've hit on the nail on the head, Basil, and you stole my thunder when you talked about removing the friction. And I think it really comes down to, focusing on the user experience, because to get a return as a landlord, ultimately you want happy tenants, and happy tenants want happy employees. So happy employees, it's about what they're experiencing in the building that's most important. So, I mean, for me, I don't think, I'm really not seeing a change to the conversations we're having, because a lot of owners and developers don't want to take on the battle of the numbers that are required, because it may mean that they lose the war. So I think it's really going to take some courage within the industry to actually make some decisions to say that no, Mr. Planner, this isn't leading to the right outcomes. And the only thing that's really going to drive that shift is using data. Like, so how do we get data that says, well, in my portfolio, I know that we're only, our utilisation, as the CPA reports have indicated, as you say, Sam, that we're getting 30% utilisation of our facilities. So why am I going to go and invest in amenity that's not going to be used? It's not sustainable from a carbon perspective. It's from a return on investment. Where am I spending my capital when yields are high, cost of capital is high. So yeah, I think it is going to take a real unity of the market to shift the change and move away from compliance, because compliance doesn't mean like true outcomes.
Aren't you arguing yourself out of a job in a sense?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I've had planners look at me inquisitively and say, but you sell bike parking, don't you? But I think for me, as I said, and I've spoke to a group of interior fit-out companies today, like we are probably a little bit removed. Like we're definitely not chasing the dollar. Like we're very passionate about what we do and delivering sustainable outcomes, that we are actually making a difference. Sure, we want to survive as a business, and being profitable is important, but we want to see a sustainable industry, and sustainable industry isn't through this drive of numbers and the arms race that we used to call in Australia, where it's the one-upmanship that you would see, and you've got leasing teams that are saying, well, you've got to have this many bike racks because your neighbouring property's got it. It's not the way that it needs to, because ultimately, we're seeing it now that owners and developers aren't actually investing in quality amenity because they're saying, well, why would I if I know that only 30% of what I'm buying is actually going to be utilised? And we're seeing these compromised decisions that are coming out. I was speaking to an architect the other day on a scheme that there's mandated 2,200 bike parks, 2,200 lockers, 220 showers. People can probably work out what scheme that is in the city, but they're saying, oh, well, to hit the numbers, I'm thinking that we're going to have X amount of Brompton lockers. We're going to move from 2-tier lockers to 6-tier garment lockers. So what's that going? What does that mean from a friction, from a user perspective? I go in, I'm in a change room where there's like a 4-tier box locker. I want to hang my shirt or my coat or my cycling gear. It's not working, but we've conformed to the policy requirements. We've ticked the policy box, but it's as I said, it's out of touch with reality of what we're trying to achieve.
And how many pet spas were they specifying?
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Sam, can I turn to you now? Could you describe firstly your experience at Cycling UK and what you were working on there, and then come to your job now?
Yes, so my role at Cycling UK was initially to accredit organisations as cycle-friendly employers, so looking at their their provision, so both the physical of bike storage and that how cyclists are coming into the building, storage, security, what facilities there are. But I think the thing at Cycling UK was, and with the accreditation, so it's overseen by the European Cyclist Federation, and of the 6 categories, facilities was only one. So the others were around servicing a bike, of so sort of repair stations, what events are held for cyclists, what is their route planning, is there a buddy system, do you provide bike buses, the things around the fringes of that. So more around increasing utilisation rather than have you got X number, you're getting away from that prescriptive, you have to have X number of bike racks per employee or per 1,000 square feet. So it was I think a really good accreditation because it focused on the other things that had an effect on the number of cyclists rather than how nice are the bike racks, which is important, but focusing on getting people to cycle rather than what they physically have, particularly as that can be, particularly for an organisation, they don't always have control of the facilities because they're often in a multi-tenanted building. And likewise, it's an expensive investment, whereas actually the behaviour change stuff, the route planning, the communication, the servicing, getting in an external supplier and bike doctor bike and that sort of stuff has a far bigger effect on the number of people cycling to a workplace than have you got 1,000 bike racks and how nice are they?
So were you an accreditor?
Accreditor.
You visited these sites and assessed them, did you?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So what did they get out of it? They got the accreditation.
The accreditation.
Which a badgification again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which we know of. There's a bit of fatigue within the market of badges for buildings and swimming badges. I've heard them sort of referred to as that people collect, and I think there's certainly that element of that. But I think beyond that, the shiny badge to say this is what we are. I think people got, so there's a sort of communication package which was handled by the Cycling UK comms team. So there would be that constant, it'd be effectively like a membership. So you've got that constant communication, and again, it's not aimed at the likes of us or probably most of the people in this room, where probably cycle in any weather, and as long as we can lock our bike up somewhere securely and shower under a hose, that would do. I think looking at getting non-cyclists to cycle, or people that might have, I think most of the population have probably got an old mountain bike in the shed somewhere, and for 50 quid you can probably get it roadworthy and good enough to cycle to the station or cycle to work. But it's that encouragement and that nudge to do that. And facilities are important, but they won't always get that person that has a bike and doesn't use it to actually get on that bike and use it. And that's the important step.
And so your current work, how's that sort of interface with your...
Completely different. So I've sort of gone back to what I did prior to working with Cycling UK. So business development, we are a regional design and build office fit out company. So we do mostly occupier work. Although we did do specialised office in Dorking, which was a 18,000 square feet stately home, which we turned from a old stately home into an office with lots of bike servicing areas, lots of really cool.
Because they'll go wrong, the specialised. Yeah.
No, I think mostly because all the staff ride to work quite a lot, and just keep the bikes in top condition. And then obviously they have suppliers, clients, retailers that come to visit. So sort of demo rooms and showrooms. So it's quite an impressive place.
So has the accreditation scheme continued?
It has continued. Yeah.
How has it changed?
It hasn't fallen apart since I left. No, it's still going.
Right, because it's not widely known about, I don't think.
I don't think so. No, I think Cycling UK. Well, like all organisations, things like changes to national insurance and other changes economically have made things slightly difficult for them. And there's only so much money to spend on marketing, and focusing where that money goes, I think is probably it's difficult. It's a difficult decision. I think for Cycling UK, a big focus of theirs, going back to sort of women in cycling, was it's called the Our Ride, Our Rights campaign, which they've sort of really got behind, and they have to direct money in the right place. And the feeling is that behaviour change, policy, working with national government is a better focus of time and resource, which I think fundamentally, we can all agree with, really, that if you're going to direct money and effort, that's probably a better thing to create that bigger societal change that we know needs to happen in the UK.
Justin, you some of the schemes you're working on now, you were listing before in our sort of pre-chat. Do you want to just talk about those projects just quickly? Yeah, well, I think someone said earlier, don't talk about 22 Bishopsgate, but I've got to. It was the project that drew me to London. I had a conversation. It was Neil Webster that did an introduction to Paul Hargraves, who was the development manager at Lipton Rogers, and gave us our first opportunity to help with the design of the facilities there and work closely with AXA and the managing agents. So that was great. When you get brought in and you've got a developer that really cares about getting the right outcome, and I think Stuart Lipton has probably got enough presence that the planners were a little bit scared, and he probably can use his influence a little bit more than others. But that's a scheme which had massive requirements from a bike parking, locker, shower provision perspective, and definitely iconic, and they had massive requirements.
Yeah, as a requirement, and it was the first building as well that was looking at they had the requirement from a consolidation centre perspective. So they were kind of battling or grappling with how we're going to fit all this in, and as you've talked about, Sam, it's the building all these basements to house all this requirement. So they were able to argue to get a dispensation on the actual the provision of the amenity within the basement. So they did have to build the basement, and the intention was to actually use the basement that they didn't fit out with lockers, bike racks and showers as a consolidation centre storage area. But and a fun fact for people that I think they estimated that they were probably going to have about 30-40 lorries coming into the city for the consolidation centre. Do you know what the actual number of lorries coming into 22 Bishopsgate is currently? 1. Yeah, so they've got this whole basement level that's not being utilised for anything, and it was something that was publicised in the CPA report that the current basement level is only 30% utilised at the moment. And I caught up with Paul Hargraves last time I was over, and they're actually going to fit it out with pickleball court. It's the latest craze. Apparently, I haven't played it myself, but maybe paddle or pickleball. Pickleball. So, that's great. I mean, if that had been fitted out with lockers and showers and bike racks, then AXA probably would have said, well, we've got a sunken cost, we're not going to rip that out. But they've got this canvas where they can actually put in amenity that's going to provide for more people in the building. And I think to your point, Sam, you know, it's about how can we optimise the building and the experience for the majority, not the minority. And things like, you know, broader wellness offerings is where, you know, by not delivering these arduous quantities of cycle parking is going to lead to better outcomes. I mean, it's having flexible space that can, you know, be changed with the demands, rather than having this mandate that people need to deliver on. The other scheme that we're involved in that I think is a really good exemplar of, you know, where you can have that courage to not deliver on the planning mandate is Sugar House Island and Vaston. So they're in an area, as people would know, that probably isn't a location a lot of tenants would cycle to, and it's very well connected from a public transport perspective as well. So they had this provision of cycles that was planned, and they made a decision only to deliver on a portion of that. And again, it's not being fully utilised, and they used that space that they didn't fit out to put in a social bike hub. So they've got and that's servicing not only the tenants but the local community. It's got a cafe. It's bringing some life to the precinct. Whereas again, that would have just been this stark space that was full of you know, metal that wasn't being utilised. So, and I think, you know, maybe planners getting out and actually experiencing what is happening rather than sitting there and making these policy determinations or criterion and box ticking. I mean, Basil was alluding to the fact that depending on which council or borough you're dealing with, you know, one says, oh, you can't have vertical bike parking, you've got to have all Sheffield stands, they take more space. We know for a fact that if you're a road cyclist, you actually prefer to use a vertical parker. They're space efficient, they've got their place. It's about having different options to meet the different needs of different cyclists. We had a scheme that one of the council members turned up with his Brompton bike and said, you can't have foldable bike provisions in your like, come on. So, I mean, I think they're probably the two schemes that come to mind around where challenging or having the courage to challenge has actually led to better outcomes.
A question for everybody, really, I suppose. You're all fairly well-travelled people. Is anywhere doing this stuff really well that you've seen and experienced?
I think there's loads of places doing it well, aren't there? I think, you know, the easiest one is Copenhagen, isn't it? And I wonder, I don't know what the answer to this is, but I wonder...
At the building level, at the office level, or at the cityscape level?
Well, cityscape level,
Right.
That was going to be my question. I don't know how much they have indoor cycle parking, and it comes back to my, slightly stereotypical comment around not trusting Londoners with your bike. In Copenhagen, they'll just leave Amsterdam as well. They might end up in the canal, might they? But they'll leave them on the street, and that's okay. Whereas you wouldn't do that here, would you? So I don't know.
So that's deeply cultural, social level statement, isn't it? What about you, Basil?
Yeah, I might answer that within the context of London, actually, because I think we're getting to the point of somehow diminishing returns. You know, my building versus someone else's building versus your building might be, you know, nigh on the same. The problem isn't the end of the trip. The problem is the middle of the trip, and this is where we need to really focus and advocate for. It's how do people get to your building, And I'm go on record as saying there are boroughs and councils in London where we will not invest in the RBKC.
Kensington, yeah.
RBKC being one of them. I mean, until recently, I'm not sure this is still true, so I'll put an asterisk. But
Okay.
at least until recently, it's the only borough in London with not a single meter of protected cycle highway.
Yeah.
And it's a hostile environment.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a current consultation to put a new cycle highway along Bayswater Road. And it's entirely sensible. I mean, I don't know if you ever cycle along Bayswater Road,
Yeah.
but it is like it's really dangerous. And they're fighting it tooth and nail. There's like 1,000 comments on it. And
They being residents.
yeah, Residents Association, the Kensington Society, you know, these kind of societies that, and by the way, they have like 30 members, 50 members. But, you know, if you're a ward councillor and you got elected 1,200 votes to 800 votes, and there are 500 people who have said they don't want a cycle lane who are all voting for you, who do you think that you're going to listen to? During the pandemic, famously, as it went to the High Court, they put in a cycle lane along Ken High Street, and it was supposed
Which
to be
is a terrible place
which
to
is also
cycle.
terrible,
Yeah.
completely hostile. And it was supposed to be, I think, like a 4 or 6 month trial. They took it out after 17 days in the cover of darkness, and the cycling groups took them all the way to the High Court and ultimately lost on a technicality. But they spent all this money putting these test cases in, taxpayers' money, and then ripped them out without even so much as a vote or consultation. So what am I supposed to do as an investor? Am I supposed to think that that is a great destination for our capital? It's literally, there's a big red X over RBKC that we won't go.
Yeah. So I suppose both of you are arguing that we need to sort the city out before we sort individual buildings. Then are you the actual infrastructure
It's a
needs to be
system.
much better?
We have to think in terms of urban system, right? The urban system, like our building, is one node. Your kit is one node. You know, your advocacy is one part of that system. We can't think in isolation anymore with any problem, whether it's climate change or micromobility. These are systems, and these are complex systems, and we need to tackle them at a system level, not just at a node level.
I'm not sure we'll do that tonight. No. Sam, in your accreditation team, which were the shining examples? Can you remember which ones came out really?
I think some of the organisations that did so organisationally, I think Lloyds Banking Group were really sort of pushing quite far ahead.
Because what did they do?
I think they separated out within their sort of property and workplace team and their sort of sustainability team and assigned it to someone, gave ownership to someone to say, get more people cycling to our buildings where possible. And that person was involved in the design phase when they're refurbishing buildings. They're involved in HR and other remuneration packages of how they're rewarding and encouraging staff. So they looked at lots of different things. And I think it's that assignment. Obviously, for someone like Lloyds, it's probably a bit easier where you've got a larger organisation. You get the economies of scale. Not every organisation can do that. And then in terms of buildings, probably the best example I went to, probably One Station Hill in Reading. Quite refreshing to see one that's not in London. I think there's almost an embarrassment of riches when you sort of walk around. There's so many buildings with such good facilities. And One Station Hill in Reading, there are some good examples.
Big basement, as I recall.
Yeah. But it's a building where they have invested. They've gone over and above, and they've made it fun. They've engaged in the public realm. So they've really sort of encouraged cycling. It's not just their part. It's the wider area. Reading's a terrible town to cycle in though. So you still have that issue of great when you're there. There's some nice areas around Reading to cycle, but within that kind of last mile or half mile, you've got to tackle some dual carriageway and stuff, which that's systematic change that's needed to really change it. But I think as Basil said, it's looking at the different elements, and I don't think we can say this has to change, that has to change. I think that we can all focus on our elements. Really, in my current role, I can't really, apart from being an advocate and another person on the road on a bike. But I think everyone can do a bit, and it's that societal direction that we all want the same thing, don't we? We all want more people to cycle, and you can see in the city that on a positive note, talking about uptake, although the utilisation of bike storage isn't that high, the number of people cycling to work in the city is grown exponentially over the years, and that's because of the cycle superhighways. That is the reason, and I think that train fares, adversely that's probably helped as well.
Although I spend more money eating now, where I save money not cycling and not getting the train, and then spend it on eating.
But more fun.
And what's the BCO's role in all of this, do you think? I mean, do you have a role to champion best practice in this area?
That is kind of the whole point of the BCO, I suppose, is to champion and enable excellence in areas like this. But I think it goes beyond that, and I think it is actually to Basil's point about the things that are harder to control. I think most building owners, most developers, most designers, most operators actually want to deliver the best space for their ultimate customer, because that matters, because that you need that return. And every occupier today wants to, the number one drive for them is to attract talent. And I think having great amenity, all different types of amenity, and cycling's great. Some people might want to run to work. Some people might want to be on one of those stupid scooters, all those sorts of things. So having somewhere that people can get to the building, stretch, cool down, have a shower, clean off their scooter or dog. Who knows? I think that's all great. But I think the industry is actually doing that, and I don't think it needs to be told what to do. It needs those guidelines, but they're there. But I think it manages itself pretty well there. But I think the thing that we do need to get together on, and maybe this is a role for the BCO as a convening body, is to talk about the infrastructure, to talk about that beyond the red line that I've talked about, because again, sort of harking back to the research that we did, that number one reason people aren't cycling is distance. Number two is safety, because it's, you don't want to get on your bike to go somewhere because you don't know if you're going to make it to the other end. So if there's, something collectively that we can do and that the BCO can play a role in that gets that heard and, maybe brings it to life with data and the value that we could create by fixing those things, then I think that's probably what we should be concentrating on, not the building, because everyone's got it sorted. Everyone understands the customer at the end of the day.
Basil, you mentioned in our pre-chat that you had something of a soapbox.
Well, that was my soapbox, just on the kind of, we've got to just direct our capital to where it's going to be a benign market. It's hard enough doing development. It's hard enough renting buildings, leasing buildings, managing buildings. And if you're in a hostile environment where the council is not only being hostile to landlords, and I may be slightly overstating with hostile, but maybe not. What does that mean, what they're doing for occupiers and businesses? Are they also then deprioritizing our customers and our clients and our tenants, who are also struggling with their own objectives and to get their own staff back to work? And so does that mean that I'm going to find it harder to let a building in RBKC because it's got, maybe I can put a great cycle provision in, but there's nowhere for them to go when they leave the building? Does that mean that someone might actually look at that and on the margin decide not to come to my building, and they'd go across the border into Westminster, where they actually have a more compliant and nicer experience for people coming to the building? I mean, it's not only just selfishly for us, because that's how we feel passionate about. It's ultimately what's the tenant going to decide when they look at our building.
It's a bit like, isn't it? this earn the commute phrase I don't really like, to be honest, because I don't think it's about earning the commute. It's about taking that friction away from the commute, and that might be that the train tickets are cheaper. It might be that it's cyclable and safe. It might be that there's, it's runnable or scooterable, but it's about how do we remove that friction.
When you look at what they're doing down in Southwark, for example, superhighway, they've got, I don't know how many miles of protected cycle lane. The local business improvement district, we've been working closely with them to promote delivery by cargo bike. We've got it on the app, on the phone. You know, it's just, these things are not actually possible everywhere. I mean, you do have to have this joined up thinking where you actually have local government, people like the local bid, us, our tenants, all working in harmony to make this stuff work. Otherwise, it's just you know, clanging cymbal.
You mentioned in your email to me before this event, business parks first of all, which is quite an interesting area, but also docking facilities within buildings as an idea, which I thought was quite interesting. Public bike hire docking facilities within buildings. That seems like a long way away, or is it something that's feasible?
So from a business park perspective, my thought on that is, well, exactly to Samantha's point, that a lot of people don't cycle. You know, think about people in town. People are commuting beyond a cyclable or a regularly cyclable distance. And that's often not the case if we look regionally, and you know, it's not necessarily as exciting and there's not the facilities, but I think it's an opportunity where business parks in regional markets, there's an opportunity to get more people cycling where perhaps there isn't necessarily within London. But yeah, to the point on hire bikes, I think something that probably Justin's probably got a bit more sort of skin in the game on. But yeah, my thought was that people regularly moan on social media about Forest Line bikes and other providers, and yeah, people leaving them on pavements, and pavements getting blocked and that sort of thing. But is there a possibility of those collection points being within buildings? And if we're going from 500 bike racks down to 250 bike racks, that opens a lot of space to ride in. And to Samantha and Basil's point about friction, if you can ride your line bike into a building, and maybe it's drizzling or whatever, but if you can ride in, then it's better than getting your phone out on any road in London is not always a great idea when you finish with your hire bike. But if you can deliver your bike to a building, and those central collection hubs are probably better for the operators and easier to do than...
Are those conversations happening?
Have you started them yet? Probably not.
We were talking about this earlier. I think it comes back to this flexibility around how you can utilise space, and we've been having conversations with owners, developers, planners about, with these provisions in buildings, like, why don't you open it up and provide an option for visitors and the broader community to use that space? And Sam, you've talked about as well, sharing capacities between buildings, where you've got a building like the Shard that has no basement. What do they do? You're being just thinking smarter about it, but it is definitely a bugbear, I think, and someone that used to ride regularly when I lived in London, coming to a building and thinking, where am I going to park? I'm running late for a meeting. You're kind of bashing it up against others on the public parking out the front. But you look at a landlord like British Land, they have a very good visitor experience. We've got a pre-book, and you come in, you've got your QR codes, you scan and you go through the turnstile. Taking that to another level and saying, well, what's your mode of transport? I'm coming in on a bike. Okay, you can park in the building, come down the side, get access. You might have a concierge service where someone takes your bike and you're using it. I think it's just thinking a little bit more broadly about that experience of because there's a lot of visitors to the building. How could we better provide? I know you're a big advocate for that community offering, Basil, in your buildings. So what can we be doing with the amenity that's there, like your pet spas or your bike? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But your bike maintenance and wash stations, and how could that actually be better utilised across the broader community? Just not thinking in isolation, as you said.
And I think that's something particularly with showers and change facilities is, yes, obviously their primary use is end of trip, but there's no reason people can't use that if they're getting changed to go out, or if they've got, if you're working during the day but you've got a black tie event in the evening, or whatever you're doing, or going for a run at lunchtime, making it as a building facility, not necessarily just an end of trip.
I think totally. Like we did some research in Australia with one of the local universities, and the reality is that cyclists are actually a minority of the users of these facilities when you think about the change room and broader amenity. It is your runners and your gym goers, your before niners, your after fivers that are using these spaces. So the fact that it's this journey through the end of trip, or the journey through the bike parking, it is a greater wellness. I actually don't like the term, but I don't think it's going anywhere. So end of trip. I think it is a wellness offering, and there's economies there around, well, if you've got change rooms, they could actually be providing for your gym and your bike parking and your saunas and other offerings and your retail. That's where, because you don't, space isn't limitless, right? You need to look at how do we optimize the space that we have. So if you can economize and get cross usage and end a trip, like cyclists that are coming in and out, it's only being used that first thing of the morning, last thing of the afternoon. So how are we optimizing it throughout the day to be getting the best bang for our buck, so to speak?
Questions from the floor. Have anybody got any burning questions?
What other councils?
I think they're certainly the one that's a standout in the bad books. I think maybe on the positive side of things, I think the city is great. I think the way that they've promoted safe cycling in the city, it's complicated and it's so dense in there. Southwark experience has been really positive. I think there are a number that are quite good. I think we also have to remember that actually densifying our urban centers is actually, generally speaking, a good thing from a sustainability standpoint, isn't it? You've got less commuting time, it's less taxing on transport facilities, less taxing on the environment, oddly enough. So the more that we can densify the cities, the better, but we also need to make sure that we can provide for all the different ways that people get in and out of buildings. But I think the city is another standout for me.
Any more questions?
Can I use the audience?
Of course.
So, is this the choir? So, does anybody here have any issues with any of the points raised? So, are they preached to the converted already, or are there people here who don't feel that what's been said is quite right? Okay, so I'll use that. So, how do we address people who are not in this room? Yeah. So you talked about the panels. You talked about certain parts of the community. How can that come together as one? Yeah. Rather than in picking off different parts. So whether it is Basil, we won't name the council, but there is a council that won't allow that sharing of the spaces underneath buildings. Yeah. So how can we bring this together? One each.
I'm going to punt it to Sam because I think it's we need organizations like the BCO who speak. Exactly. Who swears a lot. Do you know anyone like that? But I think that's with the voice of the industry. I mean, right? I mean, we're one landlord, we're a small one. But we've got our pulpit, but you speak for 4,200 people, and I think we need to make sure that the right voices are reaching. I think at the end of the day, a lot of the time it's government. We don't need to pile on planners, but it's government more generally speaking. And I think unfortunately, it's the same thing with climate. By the way, that when they go and they consult with the industry, it's not us, and they get. I mean the number of times I've heard that the industry from government that the industry doesn't want carbon pricing or doesn't want retrofit first or whatever it may be. It's like, who are they talking to? Because that's not reality. Because the reality is, I think that the majority want these things, whether it's cycling or. So I think we need you, Sam.
I will take up the challenge, but I think as well, it's about action, isn't it? You're not going to develop anything in Chelsea and Kensington, and you develop great buildings. So sucks to be Chelsea and Kensington, doesn't it? And I think that we've got to sort of stand up for what we believe in. I know that's sometimes easier said than done. But there is offices deliver so much benefit to a place. It's not just about a building. It's bringing business and innovation and people and feeding the retail and feeding the restaurants and all that sort of stuff. And if we say, well, we're not coming, we won't bring it to you, and the customers aren't going to come because they actually want a great experience and you're not doing it, then I think we can, people will pay attention then, won't they? But I will also advocate for you on behalf. What's
your own view, Neil?
Can I be parents at the same with one piece of good news? So, Active Travel England has spent far too long, but are about to publish some work in this space. I've been careful about it because I don't know quite how it's coming out. I chased them before tonight to see if I had the information there. Still, it's not like pavement parking, I've been going on 4 or 5 years. But I'm hopeful it addresses the council position on wholesale. Yeah, not universally, as in it's a sort of an easy answer, but that to me is a statutory undertaker taking a position which is consulting with and telling authorities who are coming up with policy decisions about cycle parking. So if that happens, that could be helpful.
Is there a different scenario in Australia that you're aware of? I mean, who represents the office area in Australia?
It's the Property Council of Australia, which you probably be well aware of, Sam, but...
Do they do anything in this area?
No, I don't. No, they're not. Yeah, they're not. It's the same challenges that they're having there. And I think, to a degree, they don't have the the lower mode share of cyclists in Australia. So it's probably not the same volume of requirement, but they have a lesser demand. But they're experiencing all the same issues, just not at the same scale. Yeah.
Any more questions? Christian.
Talk from a number of, I think probably all 5 of you, using the word friction.
Yeah.
And in terms of the sort of 3 areas of friction there's the office, the workplace itself. Does it have the facility, the amenities? There's the will or facility of the individual. Do they have a rusty old mountain bike that they could use, or a road bike that they want to use? And then there's the infrastructure, the means to get from one place to the other. Now, having cycled, and I cycle 15, 16 miles to and from work each day out to Twickenham, and it seems to me that the developers and those who are building offices now understand that facility, well-being facility, not just end of trip, but well-being for runners, yoga fanatics, cyclists, whatever, needs to be part of it. And I think in a lot of buildings that's going in. Fine, so that bit I don't think it's causing friction anymore. The facility in terms of, do I want to ride a bike to work, or do I want to run to work? Mentally, within this British society, more people want to keep fit and do that sort of thing. And from a facility point of view, the advent of the Lime bike and others means that even if you don't have a bicycle at home, you've got the means by which you could do it. Now, having ridden on what was brand new cycle superhighways when they first came out and clattered along there with barely any other cyclists on them, these days they're absolutely chock full. So for me, as a personal sort of, this is what I experienced, the real bit of friction now out of those 3 elements is not the well-being bit in the office, and it's not the will of society to do it. It's the fact that actually government and road infrastructure is the bit that now lags. And the one case in point was when we had the tube strikes that anybody who does ride a bike is aware of. And actually, tube strikes used to bring this city to an absolute halt. No one would come in, and it didn't. Everybody functioned. Okay, the Elizabeth line was running, brilliant facility, but the Lime bikes were all over the place, and everyone found a means. They were like, oh, I'll get on a bike. I can do that. It's fine. Actually, it was the first time I didn't come down the embankment that week because it was terrifying. There were too many bikes. I actually came through Chelsea.
Better.
And survived.
To my own hands with a few vans and taxis instead. But for me, that's where the friction is. It's infrastructure and it's approaching, and government seems to have, whether it's local government, TfL, whatever, doesn't seem to have done a great deal since its initial, wow, let's put some blue paint on the roads and build some cycle-safe highways. There don't seem to be many more. It's not moving forward any further.
So TfL, I think, I mean, Neil, you probably know the way it's structured better than anyone, but TfL is actually great. They're in favor of almost every cycle improvement. It's the local boroughs. I mean, there was a point at which Sadiq Khan was going to basically, I don't know what the technical term is, but adopt Kent High Street and take it over from the council because they were so pissed off at how the local council was operating. So TfL, and maybe that's another point of leverage, is generally speaking, I think, pretty good on these things.
The TfL are on site, and it's then just a question of putting pressure on.
It's understanding how it works, but I think it's because the TfL only controls certain routes. They don't control everything. That's
So it
the
comes
problem.
back to that great British problem of planning.
Well, it's not even, it doesn't even sit in planning. It sits in with the local ward councillors, the local government. That's where it sits. It's not a planning issue.
Were you going to develop in Kensington and Chelsea and then said no because of this?
There's no specific building, but it's not an area that we would even consider.
Where else is a hooligan in this sense?
I think there are. I mean, if you look at, I don't know, any place where there's a conflict between residents and business, I think is where it's oftentimes, and where there's a lot of cars. So like, I don't have a particular experience in Hammersmith and Fulham, but it's tricky out in that kind of part of the city as well, because you've got this real dense car usage, and that's the problem. Everyone's on whether it's the school run or commuting in or outside the congestion charge zone. Tricky.
This is taking a depressing stance. I'm getting more and more depressed. Any light at the end of the tunnel in this whole debate that you can offer?
I think we've had light.
Have we?
Just
I've just got depressed.
maybe
It sounds
January.
like infrastructure's terrible. There's friction. Okay.
Member of your former organisation, London is wonderful for cyclists. The amount of cyclists in London is outstanding compared to living in Leeds, and Leeds is kind of cottoning onto it, and they've built cycle lanes and stuff like that, and everybody, all the NIMBYs have moaned, and I just know that in 5-10 years they'll all be loving it.
After the Tour de France.
Yeah, and it's like, I was going to say that because that's what encourages cycling. That's what gets emotive about it. I think compared to 25, 30 years ago, how many people are cycling now compared to that?
Well,
it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. So as a community of cyclists, we're fine, absolutely fine. We'll never get Holland level, and we'll never get that level, but there's a lot of credit to be taken about how far cycling UK have come and stuff like that, and how policy, government, trains, everything like that. I think there's massive positives about how far we're
Okay, I'm cheering up.
Yeah.
Good.
And no, London's doing really well. Seriously.
No, I would agree, and I don't mean to be too negative. And I always on the embankment, and I don't know if you've ever cycled on the embankment. There's the counter, and I always like how many people go there a day and how many people a year. And it's like the numbers are actually staggeringly impressive. I was riding in the rain last week one day, and it was like 5,000 people had come by there by noon. It's like, wow, that's pretty punchy for a rainy Tuesday in January.
There is a slight problemette. Sorry, I'm getting depressing again. Slight problemette that people build it into their training regime, and there's sort of lycra louts bombing along, particularly the embankment, and the critical mass, I think, will help, won't it? It will slow those louts down a bit.
Everyone's got their own.
Where you're cycling though, because I commute, and it does annoy me when someone in lycra and no rucksack is like whizzing along. I'm like, excuse me, there's a time and a place for it. take it to Richmond Park. But it is difficult on the commute as well, because like that day Chris said all those line bikes are everywhere. The reason we went a different way is because yes, everyone was able to get hold of a bike, but not everyone has road safety awareness. And it was terrifying because people are getting on these line bikes, but they have no idea how to drive a car or how to navigate traffic. So that's really scary. I love cycling. I don't know how you get more people into it. I did a Cycling UK leadership thing once. It was a half a day, and I was still terrified after that. The day went off and went, off you go, you can go and lead bike rides. And I was like, what?
Can I? Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe we should do more cycling proficiency. I remember doing that in school. I quite enjoyed it. But yeah, people can get on a bike now, but they don't do cycling proficiency, do they?
Badgification of people.
Yeah.
Well, Britain's come a heck of a long way, and I'm not sure what you 5 people think is the utopian level we need to get to as a cycling community. And I think we're doing really well. You know, hills, climate compared to Holland, it's a different world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
I think we've done really well.
And I think that's the point, is that there's this expectation by providing more capacity, it's going to lead to more people cycling, and that's just not the reality.
There's a line in the way.
Correct. So, yeah, so
We have those lockers and have some saunas,
that's right.
spa.
There you go.
Yeah, totally.
People spa.
Yeah, that's right.
Saunas. Here's a story about
Yeah.
saunas. A safe one. So with the whole amenity arms
Yeah.
race. So I was talking a little while ago with Charlie Green, formerly
Yeah.
of Talk,
Yeah.
now as of next week, Workspace Group. But he was saying, they have all sorts of amenity in TOGs, and some of them don't get very utilised. But the one amenity that they have that is always almost 100% utilisation is an infrared sauna.
Yeah, I've just been trying those. They're fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, get rid of the lockers, put an infrared sauna in there, ride on your bike, jump in there. Very nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm sure.
Maybe you can only use it if you commuted to work on your bike.
There you go.
Maybe that's how we increase.
That's right.
Well, yeah, that would be an interesting incentive, wouldn't it?
Another question, Neil. Yeah. Great. Yes.
Look at him.
There's rum. There is rum. Anyway, got carry on. Yeah.
So what do we think about the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street?
That sounded very Alan Partridge. That.
I think that will be the next kind of big turning point. I think once Oxford Street becomes pedestrianised and it becomes a success that I think we all predict it would be, could be wrong here, then Regent Street will follow, Tottenham Court Road will follow. Not necessarily full pedestrianisation, but there'll be a reduction. There'll become one-way systems, public transport only, etc. And as that happens, as happened with the junction at Bank, where you can't drive through at particular times, it's only helped to increase the desirability or appeal of cycling. I think that will radiate. That's my personal view. I think that things like the congestion charge, reduce number of cars, ULEZ, reduce number of cars, pedestrianisation, reduce number of cars, and that opens up more space and more. There's enough tarmac on the road. It's a question of who can use it and who can't use it. I think that's the change. I think my view is it can only be a good thing because it will radiate from there.
But are the plans not to pedestrianise it and exclude?
Yeah.
Yeah, question.
Yeah, but I think yes, but by doing so, by pedestrianising that, it reduces traffic on Tottenham Court Road, Regent Street, etc. And so yeah, that will then increase the cycling.
Or
Which
it
is
pushes
fabulous.
the traffic to the secondary roads where the cyclists have also been pushed.
The good thing about that as well is that cyclists get the bad press from the drivers, whereas actually if we can get the drivers blaming pedestrians for taking up road space, that's brilliant.
Bloody people.
Yeah, human beings.
Any thoughts, Oxford Street?
Yeah, I think we've got to figure out how to coexist, right? And I think just this kind of blunt instrument of just saying only pedestrians, I think it's probably a bit hard. I think it's a good idea to pedestrianize it, but it would be great to figure out how do we coexist with cyclists, how do we coexist with maybe even deliveries from time to time on weekends or evenings, or there must be a solution there that can find mixed mode of using that space.
I do think Natalie actually has a point around the cycling proficiency, because there is something about mutual respect here, isn't there, for users of spaces, and not all cyclists are very respectful of the people around them, or the cyclists, jumping lights. I think it's, I'm all in favour of seeing the police at Bank Station who are pulling cyclists over jumping lights, because it can be dangerous, and if we are pedestrianising places or wanting to share, we've got to be decent human beings about it. And maybe there is actually, if you don't pass, then you're not welcome here.
Yeah. Well, the delivery company people have a responsibility here as well, in the way they train or not train their delivery cyclists. And then there's e-bikes. That's a whole nother kettle of fish.
You can't do a pass a test to become a cyclist. It will discourage cycling.
But people still want to drive cars, and they have to do a test.
No, seriously, but your CTC and Cycling UK, that's wearing a helmet as a mandatory thing.
But if you're
It
providing
doesn't.
spaces,
It stops cycling rather than encouraging.
It has in Australia, hasn't it? It's dented cycling numbers in Australia because it's mandatory, isn't it, there, wearing a helmet?
Australia has the highest, or one of the highest percentages of fatal accidents as well, even though there's the mandatory requirement of helmets.
Yeah, well, I think Chris Boardman in his book outlined the fact that it gives people this psychological belief that they can ride faster and,
I think it's true.
Yeah, do more dangerous things on the bike, which actually leads to more accidents than when you're not wearing a helmet. So.
Yeah.
Surely it's the kangaroos.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm just about to wrap up. So one last thought from each of you about what could improve office cycling active travel provision, either from local or central government or anyone.
I think it is there being an open ear, probably at central government, to understanding how collectively we can get together to fix the infrastructure problem.
Yeah.
So an easy one.
Yeah. Basil?
I won't repeat that or what I've said already about, but I think that's obviously important. I love the idea of hire bikes inside the building, whether it's e-bikes or other modes of transportation that you could just easily hop in, hop off. Because there are times that you just don't bring a bike or want to have a bike, even if you are a bike owner. That it's really convenient to do that, or you can borrow it and bring it back. Just a regular bike.
Justin?
I think there's an opportunity for bike or active hubs as well. So we talked about like the shared amenities, so where it's not just thinking about, I know it's hard when you're investing in a building, you've got to look at what you're provisioning, but if we can overcome that and provide amenities that are more communal rather than just for an asset, as you said, thinking about the greater good and is something that would lead to better outcomes.
Samuel.
Related to that, I think let's see more bike storage at ground level in reception. I appreciate that's valuable real estate, and that's why bike rooms end up in basements. But I think
at ground floor level in foyers, you're talking about
foyers, not necessarily all of it, but maybe some storage there. More Brompton lockers in receptions folding bike lockers. I think that sort of thing is more encouraging. I think the trouble with basements is it's out of sight, out of mind. And I think that, again, if you're a cyclist, then you'll go and find where you can lock your bike up securely, where you can get changed. But if you're getting the tube or walking or driving to an office if you're out of town, if you walk through reception and go, I can cycle here. There's the changing facilities. If it's there and it's obvious in your face as you walk through reception, I don't know what the percentage is, but you're more likely to use it, aren't you? It's there. So I think something around that, and I know you'd be keen to see that in every building, but it's how that becomes feasible without devaluing, potentially devaluing the asset where you're using up that valuable space. I haven't got the answer, it's just an idea.
Why is that not happening more amongst your members, do you think? Is there reticence?
I don't think it's. I haven't really heard it talked about. I mean, and I don't. We waste valuable space with atriums anyway, don't we? You look around. Well, I was on a session at LREF actually, and we were talking about in the city alone there is the equivalent reception space of the turbine hall at Battersea.
Wow.
And it's all, there's a little desk, isn't there? And then all this space, and yes, it looks lovely. And sometimes people put art shows in there, but nobody comes off the street to walk into a big shiny office reception because you don't think you're welcome there. So I don't think it would be an argument over the loss of valuable space. I think it would probably come down to design and how it looks and how it feels. But I think you are seeing more ground level cycling. I went to Sunderland of all places, and there's loads of new development going on there, and the two flagship buildings there have the cycle provision at ground floor, so you come into the reception and then it's off to one side.
And we put Brompton lockers at TBC. Yeah, so I think that's a good shout actually, and for visitors. It's, guests, one thing for occupiers and their staff, but the other one is if you're visiting a building, you cycle everywhere. What do you do with your bike? You have to haul it through the building and knock people in the lift and say excuse me and get to the 12th floor, put it in their cloakroom somewhere. It's not really.
There's a lot of security guards who tell you can't bring that in as well, aren't there? I mean, so there's an education piece, isn't there, to front of house people?
You're going to have to start with the Houses of Parliament, where you can't take a folding bike.
Yeah.
Well, it's not only that. I got turfed out of 100 Liverpool Street when it first opened. So that's even the bright new shiny ones. Got frog marched around to the back building by two security officers. I had my Brompton. And they said I couldn't bring my Brompton in. I said, "You've got to be kidding." I was there to have. What are you going to do with it? I was there to. Weapon. Yeah, exactly. No, I was there for like a climate event with like Chris Skidmore and 30 people. It was like I'm going there to see the guy who's in charge of climate. And I got.
Experience of that was the all-party parliamentary group for walking and cycling.
Oh no! Come on,
I couldn't get in.
Stop it! Really, I love it. Can't make that up.
Well, on that bombshell, all remains for me to do is thank Sagal for hosting tonight and our brilliant speakers.